It's about time to start. Let's welcome everyone to this webinar. Good morning to our colleagues in the Americas, for some of whom it's still very, very early. So the webinar today will be about food systems, multi-stakeholder governance mechanisms, where we will try to gain some lessons from Nairobi, Quito, and India. This webinar is jointly organized by the United Nations Environment Programme, WWF, RUAF, HIVOS, RICOTO, the Alliance Biodiversity SIAT, and is generously sponsored by the German government. My name is Charlotte Flechet. I work for RICOTO as Food Smart Cities Coordinator, and I will be your host for the next 60 minutes. I'm sorry, I can hear some background noise. I think, Samuel, it might be you. Can you maybe unmute yourself, if you don't mind? Thank you very much. Perfect. So before we move to the introduction of the topic, I would like to give you a few tips for a smooth webinar. So all the attendees are in listen-only mode. This means that you cannot unmute yourself, but we strongly encourage you to send your questions to the presenters by putting them in the question box and to address them also to the speakers of your choice. We will have a Q&A sessions at the end, but we encourage the speakers to already try to answer some of the questions in written in the box to save some time. And also the webinar is being recorded, so a link to the video will be shared via email after this webinar. In the first part of the webinar, we'll hear about a new initiative that is carried out by the Community of Practice on the Food Systems Approach on the Ground. Sorry for that. So Marina Bortoletti from the United Nations Environment Programme, Torres, who's a consultant for the Sustainable Food Systems Programme, but also a program manager at HIVOS, and will present a new study that is being carried out on the topic of multi-stakeholder governance mechanisms, and also introduce a new tool that is in the making, an educational tool on multi-stakeholder governance mechanisms. And then in the second phase of this side event, we will hear some very concrete and practical experiences from Mr. Samuel Ikua from Nairobi, Mrs. Inoshi Sharma from India, and Mrs. David Hakome from Quito, to really try to see how does this look in practice. And hopefully we'll still have time for 15 minutes questions and answers at the end of the webinar. In an attempt to make the webinar a bit more interactive, we would invite you all to contribute through a poll. So we invite you to visit the website Slido, which is indicated here on the slides, and to enter the code 98703. One of our colleagues will be posting the address and the code in the chat box for you to find later on. And you can join very easily from your phone or your computer. All you need to do when you arrive on the landing page is to enter the event code, and you will be able to see the questions. So before we start with the more formal presentations, we would like to invite you to tell us what words do you associate with multi-stakeholder governance mechanisms. And to be honest, it's the first time we use Slido, so hopefully this will work as intended. So again, to join, you have to visit slido.com, and then you can enter the code 98703. Let's see if the words you put in correspond to what the speakers will be talking about in a few minutes. Nice to see some new words coming in. In the meantime, while we wait for all of you to put in your words, I would like to remind the speakers that they have about 7 minutes for their presentation, and that there will be normally a bell playing. So when you hear the bell, it means that you have still 2 minutes to speak. So I hope I will not have to interrupt you. Here we have some interesting words coming up: collaboration, decision-making, participation. It's actually the bigger the word, the more people indicated this. Systems change, trade-offs addressed, complexity, systems change messy. It's an interesting one as well. Deliberation, conflicts of interest, tensions. What else? Blurring responsibilities, inclusiveness, conflicts of interest coming back again. All right, thank you very much. And keep adding more words, but for now, I would like to actually give the floor to our first speaker. Our first speaker is actually Marina Bortoletti and Carmen Torres, to set the scene and introduce us to the new study that is being conducted on multi-stakeholder governance mechanism, and to give you a bit more information about why we are doing this. So Marina and Carmen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. I'd like to provide the context of this initiative on food systems multi-stakeholder governance mechanisms. Next, please. This initiative is being implemented by the Community of Practice on Food Systems Approach on the ground of the One Planet Network Sustainable Food Systems Program. And the Community of Practice is a collaboration platform created by the United Nations Environment Programme in December 2018 to connect different institutions that are promoting food systems approaches at city and country levels. So our added value refers to the fact that we build on practical experiences from our members. We are also looking at translating the theory of food systems approach into practice, and we also focus on the strengthening of the governance structures for sustainable food systems. Next, please. There is an increasing call from science and the international community that countries and cities need to adopt a systems approach to food and agriculture policies if they are to be successful in tackling the different challenges that we face today, such as food insecurity, climate change, natural resource use, poverty, and health. So the reason why we created this initiative is because in order to apply a systems lens to their policies and manage the different complex issues in food systems from production to consumption, countries and cities are being required to rethink their food systems governance and institutional arrangements, and to move towards more participatory approach to include all actors from different groups and policy agendas into the decision-making process. So in this context, multi-stakeholder governance platforms are being recognized more and more as the way forward to support the achievement of sustainable food systems. Our goal here is to launch in the second quarter of 2021 an education learning platform, a website on multi-stakeholder governance mechanism, bringing their experiences and lessons learned on the ground. So now I would like to give the floor to Carmen Torres, who is the international expert and partner that is conducting the study of this initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Charlotte. Good morning, everyone. Good morning here in Latin America. Good afternoon for you. How does multi-stakeholder governance looks in practice? Actually, it's about bringing multiple stakeholders together to participate in dialogue, decision-making, and also sometimes in the implementation of responses to jointly perceived problems. So what we call sustainable food systems multi-stakeholders mechanisms actually refers to formal or informal participatory governance mechanisms or collaborative arrangements that bring together different constituents throughout the food system, so government, private sector, NGOs, etc., civil society, also from all the different phases of the supply chain, so from production to consumption, and also connect actors from different food agendas, environment, health, agriculture, etc. In general, these mechanisms are connected to the implementation of a holistic food policy or at least are supporting a national or subnational attempt to embed this food systems approach that Marina was talking about into the food policy making process. So this is actually how multi-stakeholder mechanisms working on sustainable food systems look like in practice. So what do we know about these mechanisms? Well, we do know they take different shapes, names, and roles. We know that at subnational level, food policy councils is the most commonly used term, but they can take different names, food boards, coalitions, etc. They can also take a range of forms related to their durability, the legal status, the representativeness, etc., and operate at different scales, sometimes at local level, municipal level, national level, and sometimes they are also connected. The roles and mandates also vary. Usually, they bring stakeholders together to share perspectives on food systems challenges, develop solutions, influence policy making, so for advocacy purposes, but we see that more and more they are also engaged in implementation. So we know a few things about these mechanisms, but we do have several knowledge gaps. We know they are being formed more and more around the world, and there's available evidence showing that they can help deal with multiple challenges and also channel collective action towards this food systems transformation that we need. But the evidence and data, it's still vague and fragmented. So we do want to fill this knowledge gap to contribute to our community of practice support to accelerate these shifts towards sustainable food systems. But we also want this to be an important input for the UN Food Systems Summit next year. So our purpose is to raise awareness and to share knowledge on these mechanisms in order to foster innovation, but also stimulate the emergence of more and more of these mechanisms at different levels. So what's the general objective of this study? At the beginning, we want to map national and subnational food systems multi-stakeholder mechanisms to understand them and share their contribution to embedding this food systems approach into policy making. We have defined several specific objectives. First, we want to understand how these mechanisms are supporting governments to better work in coordination with different actors to embed these sustainability policies with other relevant ones at different levels. We want to describe examples of concrete achievements, and you will hear more about that in the next minutes. And we also want to capture the key challenges they face. After that, we also want to understand the formats, the sustainability principles, the way they are engaging the actors and which actors they are engaging, and also analyze how these factors influence the successes, but also the challenges they face. Finally, we want to promote knowledge, as Marina was saying, by creating this tool to foster innovation, catalyze more support, and stimulate the emergence of more of them. So we have a methodology that includes two phases. In the first phase that we have already conducted, the goal was to select 10 outstanding mechanisms all around the world. So we conducted a literature review and an informal consultation with key experts. And I take this opportunity to thank them because many of them must be attending now this side event. And we developed a pre-screening tool to select these 10 cases. In the second phase that we are starting, and we will continue until end of January, we want to gather more in-depth information. So we are conducting a survey that will be sent to different stakeholders participating in these mechanisms. And we will also have interviews. We have already started with each focal point. So in the first phase, we had a very long, the literature review and the experts gave us a very long list of potential cases. And we used the pre-screening tool in next slide to select the 10 cases that met all the criteria defined for the study. So we tried to achieve a geographical balance. And at the end, we selected at national level, Denmark, France, and India. And at subnational level, we selected 7 cases. The one of Ghent, London, Los Angeles, Montreal, Belo Horizonte, Quito, and Nairobi. So I will just in this presentation give a few highlights of each one of these cases. And of course, we are very lucky to have here Inoshi, Sam, and David that will give you more insights on the mechanisms for which they are the direct focal points. So in the case of Denmark, Denmark has made organic farming the pillar of the entire food strategy. And there's actually many mechanisms collaborating to implement the organic action plan. We have here a unique collaboration with a strong involvement of private sector, and it is the combination of this market-led approach and also strong government support in policy making, but also strong focus on public procurement and helping farmers to convert to organic that has led to impressive results. Actually, Denmark has doubled the surface under organic in 13 years, and already more than 90% of public kitchens in Copenhagen are already organic. Actually, there's a strong focus on demand, and it has grown so fast that actually Denmark imports more organic than it produces. So that's the example of Denmark, where you will have more information when we finish the study. In France, the Conseil National de l'Alimentation, it's a different body. It's actually an independent multi-stakeholder consultative body that reports to 4 ministries: the Ministry of Health, Agriculture, Environment and Consumption. It is called the Parliament of Food. It's highly participatory, and it actually organizes and leads debates, nationwide debates on food topics to inform policy making. So there is a large collection in France of ambitious laws and programs to create a more equitable, environmentally sustainable food system, and in particular the Programme National de l'Alimentation, the National Food Programme, that has a multi-level governance and is implemented at regional level through regional food projects. In the case of India, the last case at national level, you will hear more about this case in a few minutes by Inoshi directly, but the process and the mechanism is quite different. Here, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India created this Eat Right India movement, taking a whole of government approach. And actually, it moved from a role of executor by actually executing a serial distribution scheme program to a role of facilitator and reforming. And there's a wide range of initiatives to promote the demand and supply of sustainable food that will be presented by Inoshi. At subnational level, we selected 2 multi-stakeholder mechanisms or food policy councils in Europe. In Europe, there's actually many very good cases. Europe is a region that is a world pioneer in this kind of mechanisms. The case of Ghent is one that is very well known. It is recognized as a leader, as a food policy council leader, and the vegetarian capital of Europe. So there's a strong focus on environmental sustainability. The city has ambitious commitments and concrete achievements, and many of the programs, such as the farmers markets, the Veggie Day, the short supply chains, and the redistribution platforms, have been used as examples and replicated in different cities, given the success they've had. The city also aims to become carbon neutral by 2050. So it has a strong focus on stimulating the demand of plant-based food. In the case of London, what we have is the London Food Board that advises the mayor. London is a front runner in fighting overweight and obesity, and there's actually a specific task force committed to halving the percentage of overweight children by 2030. So they have several very progressive and bold measures to achieve this goal. For instance, restricting advertising of junk food, helping districts produce good food retail plans, and there's also some projects such as restricting new takeaway openings around schools. In North America, there's also plenty of very good examples. We selected these 2 examples, one in the US and one in Canada. In the US, we selected Los Angeles, which is also a front runner in in promoting sustainable food systems. The case of LA has many nice insights to give. One of them is that they work through a collective impact model, and that model allows to work with a network of more than 400 entities that work to promote sustainable food systems. So they also have several acclaimed and well-known programs, such as the Good Food Purchasing Program, the Healthy Neighborhood Market Network, and they also did a very nice job to legalize street food vending and marketing it somehow as local Angelino cuisine. Besides that, Major Eric Garcetti took office in December 2019, and he's the new chair of the C40 Climate Cities Leadership Group. In the case of Montreal, and we see this also a lot in the South, the Food Policy Council started from a stakeholder-led coalition that then took traction and gained importance, and also merged into a hybrid municipal-sponsored Food Policy Council. Here also we have flagship projects focused on facilitating access to fruits and vegetables to vulnerable communities and groups that started very small and then multiplied around the country with different partnerships that were established, in particular in corner stores and outside metro stations, leading to a very straightforward facilitation of access of fruits and vegetables. And finally, in the South, we have selected in Latin America 2 cases, and we are also adding the case of La Paz, which is quite similar to Quito. In Brazil, we have the case of Belo Horizonte, who is internationally recognized as the city that ended hunger. Actually, the governance mechanism established with the Municipal Council of Food and Nutrition Security served as an example, as an input to create the CONSEA structure in the nationwide Fome Zero program. So it was a very innovative mechanism to involve civil society participation directly connected to presidency. And the food security program, it's the pillar of an exemplary food security system of 20 interconnected programs, where the food bank stands out because it channels per month 20 metric tons of food through 36 non-profit organizations. Quito, I will be very short because we are lucky to have here David, who will explain more, tell you more about this case directly from Quito, from Ecuador. But it's a highly participatory coalition that started by making a comprehensive food systems assessment, and then did very well in advocacy and lobby, leading to the inclusion of the food topic in several very important agendas and policies. And finally, and I'll also be very short because we will have Sam also here at the side event talking more about this case. We have the Nairobi and Environs Food Security, Agriculture and Livestock Forum that also started from a very specific topic, the topic of urban agriculture, and a coalition of farmers supported by the McGinsey Institute that advocated to change this approach of urban agriculture and shift also the mindsets of policy makers and decision makers from hostility to active promotion and regulation. Their work actually resulted in the approval of what we call the Act, which is the Nairobi Urban Agriculture Promotion and Regulation Act. And actually this platform has served as a starting point for a more diverse and inclusive platform working on food systems, but Sam will tell you more about that. So that's all from my side. I leave you with Inoshi, Sam, and David, who will tell you more about 3 of these 10 specific and outstanding cases. Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you, Marina.
Thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you very much, Marina. I think it was a very interesting presentation. And now actually we would like to give the participants a chance to also contribute to the study by telling us what they think should be the main knowledge gaps that this study on multi-stakeholder mechanisms should fill. So again, we invite you to join Slido. So it's the same address as before, the same code, and we would like you to vote. So we've got a few different options. about governance arrangements, how these mechanisms are financed, how responsive they are to emerging issues, what are the main challenges and barriers, the main achievements, and what's the impact, what is the political economy behind the emergence and implementation of those mechanisms. So you can choose up to 3 different options. And so we'll keep this slide open for another 30 seconds, but you can keep voting even when the slide is no longer showing. I think that will be very useful for the community of practice to know what practitioners think should be the main focus. So we'll wait a little bit more. And maybe that leaves me some time now to introduce our new speaker. So I will now give the floor to Mr. Samuel Ikua from the Mazingira Institute that Carmen already briefly introduced. He represents the Nairobi Environment's Food Security, Agriculture and Livestock Forum. So Samuel, the floor is yours.
And opposite. Please. Include. Coal. Okay.
It seems like Samuel's connection is a little bit weak at the moment. We'll wait a little bit to see if he can come back. If not, we will make sure to send along his presentation together with the recording of the presentation. So maybe we just wait another 10-15 seconds. And if not, then maybe we'll move to Inoshi. Let's see. Apologies to everyone for the inconvenience. Okay, I think probably the best course of action will be to stop Samuel's presentation, and I will invite then Mrs. Inoshi Sharma, the Director of India's Food Safety and Standards Authority, also called FSSAI, who is also the head of the Eat Right initiative, to continue with our presentation. I will now move to your slides, Inoshi. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, and greetings to all. And on behalf of FSSAI, the Food Safety Standards Authority of India, I will be presenting the Eat Right initiative. The vision that the FSSAI has is regarding a safe and nourishing plant-based food for everyone, produced in an environmentally sustainable system with a return to the traditional Indian food culture. This has been the overall objective that the Eat Right initiative works on. And why is it? Because we've got a scale. The scale is huge. We have 1.35 billion people, and we are the second most populous country in the world. But in that population also, we've got about 800 million people who are dependent on the government's public distribution system for cereals. We also have a huge number of licensed food businesses amounting to about 4.3 million. But we also have a similar large number of an unorganized food sector. What this really means is, with this huge population and an unorganized sector, we have a situation which is reflected in this presentation. We have unsafe food. Almost 100 million people fall sick with foodborne diseases every year. We've got people with unhealthy diets, which is actually leading to a rise in NCDs. The number of overweight people have doubled. Half the population is anemic. 40% are underweight. 6 out of 10 deaths are related to food. And there is environmental degradation because almost 40% of the food produced is wasted or lost. Next, please. So the solution is the Eat Right India movement, which we've launched, where we are trying to transform the food ecosystem of the country to ensure safe, healthy, and a sustainable food environment, which is based on a judicious mix of regulatory, supply, and demand-side initiatives. Next, please. So what is the mandate of the FSSAI? Being the apex body in the country, it has to ensure that there is safe and wholesome food for the citizens. So the first is to maintain food standards and safe practices, ensure that there are adequate labs in the country so that food testing can be done, make sure that food safety is complied with, and training and capacity building is done. And with all this, we are also trying to nudge citizens through social and behavioral change. Next, please. So what we are trying to do is, while ensuring that there is safety throughout the food chain at the level of processing, storage, distribution, retail, and preparation, and finally, when it comes to the citizen, we become an enabler and we have the Eat Right movement. So eat safe, eat healthy, eat sustainable makes Eat Right India movement. Next, please. So what is eat safe? Food which is not safe is not food. That means we need to combat adulteration or food fraud and eliminate toxic residues in food. Also ensuring personal and surrounding hygiene. Healthy means that diet should not only just be for the palate, but also for the body and the mind. That means we need to have a balanced diet, have a diverse diet, and eliminate trans fat and reduce the consumption of salt, sugar, and saturated fats. And eat sustainable means a diet which is good not only for the planet, but also for the people. I mean, it should be both. So we eat local and seasonal. There's no food waste. We reduce and recycle plastics. We conserve water in food processing and reduce chemicals in the food chain. Next, please. So what is the approach that the FSSAI has adopted to achieve the Eat Right India initiative, the whole of government approach? So at the national level, we interact with the various ministries and departments like Women and Child Development, Environment, Food Processing, the Public Distribution System, the Consumer Affairs. And then at the local level, we also reach out to the cities and districts and the local administration. So we engage them through challenges. We have come out with an Eat Right challenge for the cities and the smart cities and the districts, and also engage students through the creativity challenge. Next, please. We also have the whole of society approach, which means we work through networks and partnerships to nudge people to change. So professionals in food and nutrition, such as doctors, dietitians, chefs, food technologists, and then industry and consumer associations, as well as development agencies, are all brought together to bring about this change. What is the change that we want? First, a regulatory change. That means we want to bring about new standards so that there is front of pack labeling for HFSS food. We eliminate trans fat from the food chain. We have standards for fortified food, so we make sure that they become mandatory and easily available for people. And we strengthen the laboratories for food testing. Next, please. Second, we also have capacity building. This we do not only of the food handlers in the organized sector, but also the unorganized sector. And also our frontline health workers who are working in almost 1.5, no, that's 1,50,000. I don't know how much that is in millions. But our frontline workers who are working in all these centers to nudge people. Next, please. Third, we have benchmarking and certification. So we help vendors such as in street food, in fruit and vegetable markets to get certified in food safety and hygiene. Then we do hygiene rating of individual outlets like restaurants and retail shops, as well as certify the food business operators in schools, institutions, and workplace. Next, please. Fourth, we nudge food businesses to reduce the amount of fat, salt, and sugar that they're using in their food items and probably reformulate them with healthier options. Also, we reduce the food wastage and promote food donation drives. Also, we are trying to work with scientific organizations and institutes to develop alternatives to plastic packaging in food and beverage sector. Next, please. Fifth, we are trying to bring about a social and behavioral change. We have these beautiful mobile food safety vans, which are called the Food Safety on Wheels, which are roaming around in various parts of the country, nudging the citizens to change their food habits. We also organize various fairs where people are told what is it that they should adopt in their everyday lives, which will make them more healthy. And also social media through influencers, bloggers, posts are being utilized in a big way. Next, please. During the COVID-19 pandemic, in the last 6 months, we have also actively tried to engage with people online, having special designs for training, consumer education and outreach. We came out with these wonderful booklets about how people can eat right during COVID-19, nudge them to eat right, how the schools can ensure that food safety and hygiene is maintained in the school canteens. And we also came out with this booklet for food handlers of how they can ensure safety and hygiene. Next, please. So what are the 5 major key outcomes that we hope to achieve through this food systems approach? 1, significantly reduce the burden of foodborne illness in the country. 2nd, lessen the micronutrient deficiencies through dietary diversification. 3rd, reduce the burden of preventable diet-related NCDs. 4th, reduce the carbon footprint of food sector. And 5th, ensure a more sustainable food sector. Next, please. And I would like to end this presentation with a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. It is the health that is the true wealth and not pieces of gold and silver. And the food systems approach, which has been adopted by FSSAI through the Eat Right initiative, is what exactly wants to achieve. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Inoshi. It's actually a shame that we only have 7 minutes because there's so many questions and so much inspiration coming from your presentation. But thank you very much. So I will now give the floor to our last speaker, which is David Jacome-Pollitt. He's the Director of Resilience at the municipality of Quito. And he will tell us about the work they're doing there on multi-stakeholder mechanisms. David, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good day and good afternoon to everyone. Next slide, please. I will talk about the journey of Quito to start building on the food policy and how we made it a highly participative process. Well, everything started in 2002 with the Agrupar program as part of the Human Development Program of the Municipality of Quito, which actually was institutionalized. And along the way until 2018, and now I would say even 2020, we've been including and connecting the food agenda to the social and economic inclusion, to the environmental agenda, consumption, vulnerability and risk and resilience, of course, and the food policy of the city of Quito, which is basically the image that you are looking at on the right side of the slide. Next slide, please. So everything starts here in the city of Quito, from the neighborhoods, from small farmers in 2002, and they are the inspires the city, and allows us to walk through this road until we achieve the Estrategia Agroalimentaria Quito, or the food strategy of the city of Quito. Next, please. But one of the main really keystones that made us work through this path was that in 2016 and 2017, the city of Quito, along with other 7 cities, was included in a program of the city region food systems that basically put on the table the need to emphasize the right to food in order to guarantee food security with sovereignty, to ensure that we have highly participatory governance of the food system to make it dynamic and more sustainable. And we need to plan through different scales, always focusing on health, nutrition, resilience, and sustainability. That is the way to make sure that we can have a more inclusive and local economy based on food, which is so important in the city of Quito. Next, please. So the food pact is basically a response to that call. We involve different sectors. We would find consensus with different points of view, sometimes with discussions. We are able to prepare ourselves for favorable content for effective action, as we will see later. And this allows us to promote coordination between departments and sectors, either in the municipal authorities, within the municipal authorities, or central government authorities through different levels. Next slide. And as I was saying before, the richness of different perspectives through these dialogues and discussions has been quite wide, from the people from the local government, provincial government, national government, private companies, or academy, civil society through different scales, and of course international organizations. They all been contributing to the agenda, and as a result, a food letter was signed in 2017, which is basically how we finalized that part of the process and how we achieved consensus on common grounds that everyone was able to agree on. Next slide, please. One of the results, as I was mentioning before, is the food strategy of the city of Quito, which basically has 5 pillars. Governance, that's the first one. The second one is managing food resources for the future. The third, food security. The fourth one, the reduction of losses and waste of food. And the fifth one is the food economy to make it inclusive. And they are all aligned to the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, making sure are also contributing to and connecting to the international agenda. Next slide, please. What we have achieved so far is to, of course, include the food agenda into the resilience strategy of the city, the vision of the city to 2004, the Quito's climate action plan. We've been able to influence other municipalities in Ecuador. We have a GIS food system platform also as open data available for everyone, and also we have publications. But probably one of the most important keystones that we've achieved is that we are finalizing the development plan of the city of Quito, including the food agenda in that instrument, which is basically the one that governs budget and municipal actions in all the metropolitan region around the city. And that will make sure that the agenda is going to be fully supported by the municipality of Quito. Next slide, please. And just to finish, we've, of course, like in every process, we've had some problems and challenges. For example, we were asking ourselves how to integrate food into the territorial development plan of the municipality of Quito. We've already solved that. that is an important point, or how to address food from the resilience perspective and how to really involve multi-stakeholders. But we've also found opportunities and strengths, and we've been able to make visible all these different put on the top of the table the food discussions with different people, especially at a political level. But probably one of the main strengths that we have is that the process has been anchored in a very active multi-actoral platform, and that has kept alive the whole process, and that has enabled us to really influence decision making and policy making in the city. The fact that agri-food tag of the city of Quito, it is a legitimate and recognized multi-actoral platform recognized by municipal authorities. And what we are trying to do is really institutionalize the food pact of the city of Quito. And with this last slide, I finish my presentation for attendance.
Thank you so much, David, for this very interesting presentation. I think it gave us great insights into how Quito has implemented the mechanism in practice, and I think that it will be a great contribution also to the study that the community of practice is implementing. So I would like now to leave some time for the Q&A. We had initially planned to have another poll, but I think we only have about 13 minutes left. So I have a few questions here. I don't know if it has been addressed in the chat yet, but there's an interesting question here about whether the study also includes comparison cases. So if you're also looking at other types of mechanisms that are not multi-stakeholder, and how you will, if any, integrate this comparison. I think this question is mostly for Carmen and Marina. Carmen, would you like to answer the question?
Sure. No, I thought Marina wasn't muted. Yes, I answered the question in the chat box. Actually, in the literature review, of course, we briefly review different governance mechanisms, trying to bring all the voices from different stakeholders to the table. And sometimes they are not specifically multi-stakeholder mechanisms as such, but the study is indeed focused on these kind of mechanisms in the very different formats and shapes that we have already encountered. Regarding comparison, we do want to study in depth these selected cases in this first phase, but also compare them with regard to all the different criteria that we presented in the first half of the side event.
Thank you very much, Carmen. We've got also another question about what's the cities who are present here and India considered to be the main successes of the multi-stakeholder platforms. I think it has been touched upon maybe in the presentations, but it would be interesting to come back on this. And how do they see the future of their platform, of their initiatives? What would be the main points on the agenda moving forward? So I would like to ask maybe first Inoshi to reply, and then give the floor then to David, and if possible, stay within 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So yes, we have, trying to scale up the Eat Right initiatives, because as you must have seen, the initiatives by themselves are really vast, and they are working both on the supply side and the demand side. So when you want to work something on the supply side, which means tackling the food businesses, it has to be on ground. And of course, the FSSAI has its offices in every city and district in the country. But if you want to scale up initiatives, it's nice to have a challenge. So the challenge is something that, we thought we'll open to all our 750 districts. Already we've got about 200 districts participating, and gradually in the matter of another 3-4 years, we want all districts to scale up this thing. what really happens when you start with a program is you need to see as a pilot form how successful initiatives are. Do you need to tweak them? Do you need to even learn from something and make a change so that it becomes more easy to adopt and plan it? So that's exactly why we were thinking of doing it in a gradual stage by stage. Another thing that we've done very interesting is we've sort of signed an agreement with the state departments of the FSSAI. So India being a federal country, we're at the center, the FSSAI authority. And in these states, we have the state governments as well as the local authorities place. So we've undertaken an understanding with them that we will be giving certain funds or transferring certain financial assistance to them, and they can then implement the programs rather than it being controlled from the center, because that way the programs can be modified to a particular region, to a particular cultural setting, or a particular food-based initiative that they probably want to do. So that's it from me.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much, Inoshi. Maybe I'll pass the mic then to David to talk about Quito.
Sure, thank you, Charlotte. I think the question is a very important one. Well, here in the city of Quito, our main effort, and we are focusing primarily into embedding the food strategy and the food agenda into the development plan of the city of Quito. As I was mentioning before in my presentation, this is critical. The plan spans for 10 years. That'll be the first point. That allows to allocate in a coordinated and articulated way public budgets into the agenda. That allows the agenda to be coordinated within the municipality corporation among different agencies, such as the environmental agency, such as the land use planning agency, productive development agency, or the citizen participation agency, and so on. I think that is a critical point right now for the city of Quito to move forward and make sure that the agenda has enough support. And the other important point that I think needs to be addressed here in the city of Quito, and we have also been having discussions around that, is to institutionalize the Agri-Food Pact of the city of Quito. It needs to be anchored. We are not sure yet if it needs to be anchored directly to the municipality of Quito or as something that works with the municipality of Quito, but is not necessarily part of it. But that will also make sure that we will keep different perspectives and stakeholders and so on around the food agenda, and again, expand our capacity to coordinate and articulate different parties.
Thank you, David. And indeed, this tension between the willingness to institutionalize a multi-stakeholder governance mechanism and then keeping it more of a participatory, citizen kind of driven initiative is something that a lot of cities, a lot of at different levels as well struggle with, because there's different risks and opportunities attached to that. But that's interesting. I'm curious to hear what will come out of it in a few years from now. And then we've got also another question, which I think is directed mostly at Carmen and Marina. I will let you decide who will answer it. So there is substantial criticism on this booming multi-stakeholderism. Do you think that a multi-stakeholder initiative or study like yours is critical enough to assess multi-stakeholder mechanisms? Is this a good academic research setting? So I think it's about the biases that we might have towards it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I can respond that, and then Carmen, of course, you can complement. But it's true that there is a booming about multi-stakeholderism right now, and we cannot think that just by creating a multi-stakeholder process that you are being effective in terms of achieving sustainable food systems, because there are a number of needs in terms of operational needs, budget, and also organizational needs that those multi-stakeholder mechanism needs to take into account. So in this study, we want to really understand and assess what are those needs and what is making multi-stakeholder governance mechanisms to work well, and with that, try to inspire and help other government and stakeholders that also want to put in place effective mechanisms. And in terms of the literature, what we are taking into account in our study, first of all, there is some literature from Johns Hopkins University. There are also other initiatives that are being conducted by the community of practice itself, the members of our community of practice. As I was mentioning in the beginning, we try really to build on the knowledge of our members. And some of them are here in this side event. So we talk about Ricoto, Rivas, RUAF, FAO, CLAY, and UNAP, and SIAT. So, and all these organizations, they have initiatives on the ground, and we also build on their knowledge for that, for this study. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Carmen, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. Maybe also connecting to the following question, which is about the basic conditions to be able to initiate this kind of mechanisms. I think both questions are connected. Yes, as Marina was saying, actually, we are more than a multi-stakeholder initiative. We are a community of practice of sustainable food systems on the ground. So besides the literature review based on, yes, on all kinds of authors and literature published, not only on these kind of mechanisms, but also participatory democracy in general, we really want to build on this on the ground bit of our name and really try to learn lessons from what is being done on the ground at different levels and understand also the political economy behind the birth, but also how these mechanisms gain traction and achieve concrete results. That is why for the selection, for the first 10 cases selections, which we understand are like best practices or outstanding cases, we define such strict criteria. In particular, we wanted these mechanisms to be really inclusive, also them to be connected to a holistic food policy and show at least some indication of concrete results. So we were quite strict so that we could make sure that we were looking into examples, on the ground examples of mechanisms that had achieved results. And as I said before, try to understand the political economy in a given context of their birth and their successes, but also the challenges they face, etc. So that's actually, as I explained during my presentation, the purpose and the specific objectives of the study. So a lot of the questions you raised in the chat box are of course considered, but this, what I just said, is really what we want to do. We want to really learn and build from concrete experiences on the ground with some level of success.
Thank you very much, Carmen. And we have 2 minutes left, maybe for a quick final question. And we have one here which asks, what do you consider to be the key basic conditions to be able to initiate a sustainable food systems, multi-stakeholder governance mechanism in any given in the Global South? So what are the key conditions? And I would like to ask Inoshi and David to maybe summarize in just a few words.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. So, what is really important for any program to go, especially when you are adopting a food systems approach, is that you have multi-stakeholder engagement, and it can't be just at one level. So it has to be multi-pronged. So at the apex, you should have the political will. You have to make sure that the government, the various departments are with you. So your vision has to be extremely clear in terms of what kind of dialogues do you want, what food system approach do you want to approach, have also. And the next is, while you are having this at the national level, make sure you are reaching out to the local governments, the municipalities, the local governments which are working at, say, the district or the village level are also engaged in this, because then that connect is not there sometimes in terms of what the national level is thinking and what's happening in the ground at the implementation level. And finally, the most important, make networks in society. The networks have to come through your professionals, your development partners, your stakeholders in terms of consumer organizations, NGOs, because they are the ones which will actually reach out to people. And people many times may be skeptical I'm not saying every time, but sometimes about what the government is saying. But if it's said by a professional, by a doctor, by a nutritionist, people do listen. And if you have celebrities, role models, actors, sports people with you, more the better. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Very inspiring. David, would you like to add a few last words?
Yes, I was answering on the chat a question from Florence Zegal about the links of the city of Quito with the region, and I was just mentioning that the analysis that we made allowed us to understand how does the food system expands beyond the physical limits of the metropolitan district of Quito, and that we've been able to understand those links through the five, let's say, the five links of the food chain of the city of Quito, so that we understand who is involved in production or transformation or distribution and so on, and how does that work. That has allowed us to either articulate better or plan better when facing the development plan of the city. But although I think we need to recognize that this is a road that we still need to walk down yet.
Well, thank you very much. So with this last question, we are going to close the webinar. We have already gone beyond our allocated 60 minutes. So I would like to say again a big thank you to all the organizers and all the speakers. It's a shame, unfortunately, that Samuel had to drop out, but we will make sure that his presentation is shared with all the people who registered. We'll try to find another way for him to get his message through. And I think maybe before we close, just a few words. I think there's a few keywords that you said in the last minute that I think resonates with probably a lot of participants, which is the importance to have a clear vision and to really build those connections and those networks between the local and the national level, between the city and the region, between the different kind of stakeholders. I think these are things that we probably intuitively know, but that are very hard to put in practice. So yeah, thank you for sharing all these insights. Thank you very much to the audience for sharing very good questions and playing the game of answering our polls. So yes, take good care, stay healthy, and thank you again. We'll keep you posted on what happens with the study, hopefully in the next few months. So thank you. Goodbye, everyone.